please put your hand up or ask a question. Okay. I'm currently showing my screen. I've made it as small as I can and still be able to work. So.
We still have people coming in.
Yep.
We've just worked, like our numbers are going up, and we have 23 registered. We don't have that many arrived yet.
Okay, Chris is saying we still have people coming on. That's fine. We're just doing administrative things at the moment. I've made my screen size as small as I can, so hopefully everyone can see it okay. Does anyone right off the bat have any difficulty seeing the screen? Someone cannot hear anything. Okay. Chris, do you want to respond to Carol?
Yeah.
Thanks. Anyone other than Carol having... I'll type the message here.
She needs to be on through web audio, so make sure the speakers are on. Other people are able to hear. Carol goes typing.
You can hear me typing. Okay. Can you hear me talking now? I'll leave you to monitor that. Okay, I'm going to get started. I think we're ready.
Yeah.
All right. So there obviously have been a lot of changes in this particular release. I'm going to go through them one by one. As usual, I'm going to start with changes that affect everybody first. And then there is one, I believe only one change that affects just the volunteer software, so we'll cover that next. And then at the end of the call, we're going to cover changes that affect only the community information software. And we're doing that so that the volunteer members who want to leave the call early can do that. Okay? Does anyone have any questions about the process that we use for one of these calls before I get started? You can feel free to type questions in. Chris is going to be here monitoring the questions and letting me know if anyone has any issues while I'm doing the demonstration. Okay? All right. So I have my list of enhancements in front of me. These will probably be in a bit of scattered order because it's just whatever they came out of the database, the enhancements database as. For those of you who don't use our enhancements database, just a reminder, you can go in and put your enhancement requests in at any time, and we will come at least every week or two, review your request, put an estimate on it if we can, prioritize it, put more information or ask for more information about the feature. We also try and take note of the things that we're currently working on and also the changes that are expected for each release. This particular list here, you'll notice, all have a tag of March 31st. That's the official tag for this release. So anything tagged with March 31st belonged with this particular software release. It's not to say that they all were distributed on the 31st of March, but rather that's the release name that all of these features came out with, which is this one that we're talking about today. Okay, so this is the list I'm going to be going through. Besides this particular list, there's a few things that are not user visible, that are not necessarily part of that list. And I'll start by addressing some of those because it has and will cause some side effects up until now. One of those things is that we have begun caching, meaning storing a copy of certain kinds of information in order to make your search results and your record details pages come up faster. I've certainly noticed an incredibly big difference myself since making this change. What it means is for certain kinds of information that is not just one single text field that you type into a big box, but rather things like the languages, the communities, the taxonomy, the subjects, where you're typing in or you're adding in a bunch of related information. Normally the software has to go and grab that information from several places, assemble it all into one piece and present it to the user. And particularly with fields like the taxonomy, that's actually quite a lot of work and can make things quite slow. So what we're doing is pre-assembling that information, storing a copy of it, and then it's available to present to the user. And what happens is every time you update a record, it goes and updates that cache. So we still may find a few places where the update isn't happening at the right time. There are mechanisms in place to make sure that the update does happen, but it may be that the refresh to the user, we can potentially miss places where we have to tell the software to do the refresh right away. It would happen eventually, so it would be a delay of minutes potentially if we haven't caught all the places that it needs to be changed. So, you know, if you do notice that happening, you can report it to us, and we can make sure that we've caught all of the places where we need to give the system a little kick and say, hey, someone's made a change, please reflect those changes to the user. So I know Ross reported one that's still outstanding after doing a copy record, for example. So we know we need to go in there and make sure to give it a little kick to say to update all of the caches after the record copy. What would happen if that didn't happen is the next time anyone added any record of any kind, that gives the system a little kick to say update the caches. So as I say, in the worst case, this is a delay. It's not that it's not going to happen. It's that if we've missed something, it will be a bit delayed. And hopefully the main effect that we've got from this is a speed change, particularly in search results that use any of the cache fields. And those cache fields right now are all of the versions of the taxonomy field. So with or without links, both the staff and the public version of the taxonomy have been cached. Both the mail and site address have been cached. Your located in community has been cached. The subject field, authorized subject specifically, has been cached. I think there's anything else. And the publication field, not the friendly publication field, but just the regular publication field, has also been cached. What we did was went through the databases and determined which fields were the most commonly used that were also we thought would take the most time, and those are the ones we decided to cache. So hopefully that will result in a speed improvement for everyone. All right, let's see. I'm going to go through this list, and if there's anything else I see that's behind the scenes that isn't covered here, I'll do that later. So I'll start with the first one on my list, which is breakout components of the agency admin designation. So this only applies to super users. I'll go to setup and user type. So we used to have a little checkbox right above super user that was called agency admin, and that's gone. There is no more agency admin designation. Instead, we broke out the agency admin designation into all of the little parts that used to make up being an agency administrator. And that includes the ability to manage users for your agency, the ability to do add SQL, the ability to view statistics, or no, that was already out. Where is it? export was already out. The ability to delete records. Have to go through. And I think there's another one in the volunteer software that's different. So all of the things that used to be special to an agency administrator now are broken out separately. So what that means is you can give someone the ability to search with AddSQL without having to give them the ability to manage users. So this was a security concern where people were being given more privileges in the database than they should have had because it was an all or nothing thing. Either you had to give them all of the privileges or none of them. So by breaking them out into smaller pieces, we're hoping that people can give just the privileges that they mean to give and not all of them. Anyone who was already an agency administrator will have automatically been assigned all the same privileges that they had before. And Chris, you're monitoring for questions? We're good? Okay. So that's it for agency admin, and this affects both the volunteer and the community information software. Next in my list is, next in my list is the, I'll do the searching, which is, I think everyone probably noticed this by now, but we've added an autocomplete feature to the search boxes, both on the volunteer and on the community information. I know people don't necessarily use the keyword searching on the volunteer as much and may not have noticed it, but it's there too. If you do not like this feature for any reason, you can turn it off in the view setup. Okay, I started everybody with it turned on, but if you do not like this feature, you can turn it off. The way it works is depending on which of these 4 values you've chosen, it will automatically look up potential values that relate to that particular item. So in subject, if I start typing, it will automatically look up things that have the same keyword as whatever I'm typing. Keeping in mind that it's only going to bring up data that's relevant to the view that I'm working in. So let's say I have a specialized view for senior services. If none of the records in that portal have childcare associated with it, then it's not going to find the subject childcare when I start typing. So it's not going to give the users results that won't bring up records. Okay, so if whatever they type is pretty much guaranteed, in fact it is guaranteed to give them results. There's nothing that they can get an autocomplete for that wouldn't give them a search result. It's been built that way specifically. One of the reasons this is really important is the organization name search. Obviously you do not want your non-public and private record titles to be coming up when the public is doing an autocomplete search. All your test records and deleted records and other private information records, you really do not want that to come up for people who are not internal staff users. So that's why everything has been limited by the view that you're working in. It also is, it's a proper keyword search, meaning I can type Ottawa Big and it will find Big Brothers Big Sisters Ottawa, so it's not, I don't have to type it exactly the way that it appears in the name in order to find it. One of the things it does do is it prefers things that start with the same thing that I'm looking at. So I'm going to actually start with that one doesn't work. I'm going to do what's a good one to start with, Chris? Here, I'll do this. Here's a good example. So I'm looking for the 4 letters PROV. You'll notice that it's not alphabetical. It prefers items that start with whatever I'm typing, and it puts those first. And only then will it put the rest of the list in alphabetical order. It shows a maximum of I believe it's 20 items, and it will keep refining the search as you type until it runs out of options. So if I keep typing probation, you'll notice my list changes. I get some additional items because a lot of things that are no longer relevant disappeared. And again, all the ones that start with what I'm typing occur first in the list, and everything else will occur next in alphabetical order. If I do the same keyword search probation in keywords instead, I'm going to get a completely different list because it's going to search not just organization names, but also the subject and the thesaurus, only depending on what the view is. So if I'm in a view that doesn't use the taxonomy, it will not search the taxonomy. If I'm in a view that doesn't use the thesaurus, it will not search the thesaurus. Okay? So you have control over what is presented. Any questions about how autocomplete works? At the moment, we set it to 4 characters before it searches, but that is something we can adjust. So if we get feedback from you that 4 is too few or 4 is too many, you can let us know. A little tip for staff, if you're typing a very, very small word like HIV or STD and you want it to bring up a list, put a space to get to 4, okay? Because it will automatically trim it. But that's the trick. If you have to search for something that's less than 4 characters, obviously this isn't something that the public will get. But you as staff, be aware that if you want to do a search with less than 4, just put spaces until you hit 4 characters, and then it will automatically do that for you. I can do the same with STD. Okay? Again, if 4 turns out not to work well, then we can adjust that to be something different. Okay, so that's it for keyword autocomplete. We do also have an autocomplete on the other community box for those of you that have that available besides your checkbox communities, or if you want to frankly completely get rid of your checkbox communities and just allow the users to type the community that they want, you can do that as well. There's a question?
Leslie wants to mention the importance of the begin before the text box.
Oh, yes. Okay, so if you haven't noticed the little debate about this on the bulletin board, there's a little bit of a discussion about how with the autocomplete, it's really important to pick the kind of search you want to do before you start typing your keywords in. There's no point in doing a search in keywords if what you really want to do is search organization name, because you're not going to get the relevant suggestions. So one of the things we're discussing is whether we might move this up and say search in and have that first before the text box to remind users that it's appropriate to pick where you want to search before you start typing your keywords, because it does change what you get as a suggestion.
We're getting questions about the amount to people running into the slow click bug.
Okay.
And they're thinking it's IE7 specifically, but it's not.
Okay. So we have had a report about what Chris and I are calling the slow click bug, and I'll demonstrate it for you. If I hold down the mouse on it instead of clicking quickly, it doesn't pick it. Okay? So what I did there was I held down the mouse button instead of quickly clicking, like this. This is a known issue. It's not an issue in our software code, but an issue in the library that we are using. It's a user interface library that we're using to do that drop-down. And a bug report has been filed. There was already a bug report there when we went to go and investigate the problem. So they're aware of the issue and hopefully working on it. And obviously, as soon as we hear that they have fixed that issue, we would update, or we can't really update the library. We're using Google's hosting of that library. But it is an issue in the third-party library, so we have very limited control over correcting the problem. But for you as users, if you want to avoid it, the 2 tricks are either use the arrow keys to pick the one you want, or click fast. So just click. click really fast, and then that will not happen. So we are aware of that issue. There isn't really anything we can do beyond trying to follow up with the bug report, which we are, and we'll certainly let everyone know as we get information about it. And Chris says he's going to try and do a workaround to see if we can do something to avoid the problem until they fix it in the library. We're good? Okay. All right, so that's autocomplete, and obviously we'll be seeing this in a few other places, as I'm sure everyone has already noticed. Okay. And again, that also applies to volunteer opportunities on their keyword search. Okay. I want to find the next common one. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the changes that we've made to login pages and the login system. Some of this you can tell and see, and some of this you can't. We've made actually quite a large number of security-related changes in this release, and some of them are still causing some hiccups as they're banning people when we don't want to ban them. But I'll start with the new login page. So when you log in to your new CIOC database, if you haven't noticed, you will now be logging into oh, I'm logged in. Am I? No, that was helpful. Did I not do login? Okay, well that was smart. All right. You'll now be logging into a secure site. So you'll see it says HTTPS instead of HTTP. The other thing you'll notice, if you have a stripped down administrative template, which we strongly recommend, meaning no external files, then you will also notice that in most browsers it will tell you that you're in a secure site in many ways. In mine you'll see that I have this blue block here telling me that I have entered in a verified site, and if I put my mouse over it, it tells me who the signing authority is for the secure, the SSL certificate. Okay? So what this means is as you transmit your username and password to CIOC to be verified, it's going to encrypt that information to make it more secure. Okay? And in order to make use of this feature, you have to use a CIOC.ca name. Some of you have other web addresses associated with your database, and you can absolutely continue to use those. But if you want to make use of this secure login, you have to sign in with your CIOC.ca domain name. Every database has one. If you do not know what yours is, you can ask and we will let you know. But every database has a CIOC.ca name as well as whatever other name it might have.
I would do their daily operations.
Once you've signed in, it will no longer say HTTPS. So it no longer says HTTPS. Because I'm signing in here with hamilton.cioc.ca, that's what I'm now going to be working in as a staff member, because that's the site that I signed into. So if I switched over to regular Inform Hamilton, I will not be signed in. Okay? I'm not signed in. I have to work in the CIOC.ca domain name in order to be signed in if I signed in through CIOC.ca. So other changes that happen behind the scenes is that we have eliminated what we would call clear passwords in the database, meaning that it's now impossible, 100% impossible for us or anyone else to retrieve your password for you if you forget it. The best that can happen is someone can assign you a new password. This again is a security measure to ensure the security of our passwords and that other people can't in some way get access to your password. So at this point, nobody, period, can get access to your passwords, not even us. This is a good thing, but it does mean that you need to be even more diligent about making sure that you remember your passwords. Someone else will have to reassign you a brand new password if you forget it. And again, CIOC does not do that except under very extreme circumstances. You have to contact a super user or someone else in your database to make that password change for you if you forget your password. There's a question?
They want to know about taking the login information so they don't forget. So if the browser forgets because it's using HTTPS.
Right. Right. So many of you discovered upon logging in after the software upgrade that your saved passwords no longer apply. This is, sorry, I've got beeping on my phone. This is because by being HTTPS instead of HTTP, it's a different site, and your browser doesn't recognize your old saved credentials. You will need to resave that login again, just this one time, to work on HTTPS instead of HTTP. You will not have to keep resaving it over and over and over again. Just this once, and then it would resave. Okay, any other questions?
There's a question about whether it works for volunteer profiles as well.
So currently we do not have...
We do on the login pages, we don't on the other pages.
Pardon? On the login pages for volunteer?
Yeah,
okay.
Not on the save your password.
So we have not completed all of the secure account changes for volunteer profiles. We've started, meaning when you sign in with your username and password, that is on a secure site, HTTPS. But unlike the regular account management page, which is now secure, account management in the volunteer profile, so if the user went in and changed their password, for example, or when they first create their account, those are not secure yet, although in the long term they will be. Okay, let me just check off my list that I've covered those things. Okay, I'm going to do some more about security now. So exciting, I know. All right, so next on security we have a new type of user. Woo! I'm in Hamilton. I'm thinking, I don't have that giant red message on my account page. What's going on? Okay, here we go. Woo, that looks funny. Okay, we have a new kind of user. This is called a single login user. You need to understand what this means before you ever assign this to anyone, because it has consequences. A single login user is a way to ensure that someone cannot share their account with anyone else. Why you would want to use this kind of account is if you are leasing a login to a third party and you want to make sure that they're not giving it out to, you know, everybody and their brother and getting a free ride. If they're buying a certain number of accounts from you and you want it to be used by only a certain number of people. This allows you to be absolutely certain that only one person can use this account at a time. The way a single login works, if you haven't used the client tracker, because that's single login, the way a single login works is if someone is signed in and someone else signs in again somewhere else, including on a different browser on the same computer, it will boot out the first person. Only one person can be logged in at a time, and every time someone logs in, it unlogs in whoever had previously been logged in, basically. It gets rid of any other sessions that might have been running connected to that account. So the negative restriction of that is you can't even have multiple browsers open on the same computer logged into the same account. But this is not something that's intended for data managers or your regular staff where you really are not concerned if they happen to have more than one browser logged in at the same time. This is really intended for situations where you want some control over how many people can use that account or how they can use that account. So, sorry, there's a question?
It's not about the severe whenever you're wrapped up with this, we have a question from previously.
Okay, well, I think that's all I have to say about single
Okay.
login. We have another
So
question.
we have another question, and that is that when logging in with HTTPS on the new login page, and you're using Internet Explorer gives you a nasty alert that says, "Hey, you have mixed content."
Right.
I don't know if...
Yeah, I'll explain this. So I mentioned earlier about how if I'm in a nice, clean template that doesn't have any external files, I would see this verified by lovely thing in my browser, and a nice closed lock, and all of that nice stuff that we like to see when we're logging into a secure site. If you have a template for your administrative area that has third-party site links, or even like links into CIOC.ca that are not secure, then you will get a mixed content error from your browser, most likely. I'll show you what that looks like.
The big culprits there are the style sheet, the JavaScript, and the logo.
Oh, they've taken their logo. That won't work. They've taken their logo out. All right, let's try this again.
What's Liz from? Because Liz will be...
Here we go. So this is what it looks like. This page contains both secure and non-secure items. Do you want to display the non-secure items? I'm going to say yes because I want to show you what they are. It's this logo right here. That's what's causing the problem. Keep in mind that your administrative template, the one that's used in setup areas and on your login page, is totally different than the one that's used by the public or for your searching or for your record details or any other place in the software. There is a special template that's shared by the entire database, both volunteer and community information, that is called your default or administrative template. Your default or administrative template should not have any external files, images, style sheets, anything. It should be plain Jane. If you do that, you will stop getting that nasty error message. All right? So again, I'll show you what your administrative template looks like by flipping back into my database here. I'm going to go to the setup area, into general setup options.
Okay, so we got a question about the single login. I've got time to...
Okay, I'll come back to the single login question once I've explained this template issue.
Okay.
Right here, admin design template. Okay, this is what we care about in our general setup options. Whatever template you have assigned to admin design template, that is the one that should be plain, meaning no external files. As long as everything in that template has no external files, then you will not get that mixed content message.
The design.
Which window?
Go to the template.
Okay, so in design templates, I'll go into my admin template here. So what's key here, you'll see no logo, no background image, no style sheets, no nothing. It's plain, plain, plain. No custom headers, no custom footers. It should be as plain as possible. You can have custom headers and footers that are HTML. It's actually just the images.
No, because the request is made by the server.
If the custom headers and footers have references to external
Yeah,
images, it will be a problem. If the custom headers and footers are just HTML, that's not a problem, okay? So it's specifically to reference to external files like images, style sheets, JavaScript files, and so on. That's a problem. If I just type some HTML in here, you know, that's fine, no problem. That isn't what causes an issue. And you can do inline styles in there or whatever you need to do. It's specifically referencing external files that are not on the secure site. Okay, now there's a single login question.
Yeah. Okay, so they have a partnership with a ministry that give one of their staff a back-end entry. If this staff decides to share a user and password with a colleague, how would the browser forbid the entry?
Okay, so this is exactly the scenario that I was discussing you would potentially want to use this for. You have a client where you're saying one person is going to be allowed to access it and you don't want them to share it with their colleagues. It doesn't technically prevent them from giving the login information to their colleagues, but what it does prevent them from doing is both using it at the same time. So they can't both sign in to the back end simultaneously. That's not allowed. If one of them is signed in and the other person signs in too, then the first person gets kicked out. So that, in effect, makes it impossible for them to truly share that login because they could never use it at the same time. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. All right, let me check that off my list. There are many, many security changes for this release. So unfortunately, for those who are bored by security changes, be prepared. All right. Next, remove requirement for public view. Okay, so for the first time, we've had a database where it's 100% staff and doesn't have a public-facing site. This is not something you can do yourself, but if we do have members who want to have no public site, they can now have that. We would do something behind the scenes that allows that to happen. So this is not something that you can configure in your site, and I'm sure none of you really want to make yourselves not public, but we did make that possible, whereas before there was absolutely no possibility to have a site that didn't have a public-facing search, and now you can. Okay, next we will do more security, fun. We're going to talk about security on download files. All right. So a few things have happened to your download files. One, you have to be logged in order to get it. And in particular, you have to be logged in as a super user in order to get it. It used to be that as long as you knew where the download file was and you had the zip file password, that you could get the download. That is not true anymore. You have to still have the zip file password, but you also have to be signed in as a super user in order to get access to the download file. And once again, we do not give zip passwords out to anybody except the official technical contact for the database. So Laura has to tell us that you are the official technical contact for the database before we are allowed to give you the zip file password. I don't think there's any questions on that, but all right, so next, we've done a similar security check on export files. So again, in the past, if you knew where the export file was, then you could get it, and that is not true anymore. And in fact, you can only download exports that you create. One of the interesting side effects of this is we know who creates every file because your username is in front of it. So from this point on, only you can download files that you export. No one else can get those files off the server.
The good part about that, well,
Sorry? I'm getting there. Chris is getting ahead of himself here. So while I'm talking about exports, the other change that we've done to exports is automatically zipped the files. So no more 25 meg export files. When you do your export and go to download it, the system, when it does the security check, will also automatically zip the export for you before you download it, so that you're downloading a much smaller file. We have encountered at least one case where someone had a download file that was still zipped and they thought it was unzipped. So we are investigating what was going on there. But be aware that the file that you are downloading is always zipped. All right? You have to unzip it before you can use it or before you can import it into the database. In the future, we do plan on allowing you to upload zip files for importing, meaning you would just send your zip file right to Find Help, and they would upload the zip file instead of the big, gigantic XML file. So that is coming, but until that happens, you have to unzip the file before you can load it into the software for import. Any questions about zipping export files? Okay, Chris wants me to show how that works, so I will do that. might as well show Excel spreadsheet while I'm at it. Yeah. Yeah. It's everything. Oh, I'm doing every record in the database. Oh, that was such a mistake. I have so many records in my database. Oh, sorry. I forgot to pick a... Oh, that was such a mistake. 9,000 records. That was such a mistake. Okay, well, while that's going, I'll move on. Next. So, yeah. Oh. Yeah, I better. I'll just run off. Inform. Yay. That'll work. My whole computer's locked up? Oh, no. Really? No, we're good. Okay. Next, we'll do, I think we'll do the changes to field setup, which I know threw a whack of people for a loop. So again, I've offered on the board, but for anyone who doesn't like the way your fields are grouped, you may ask me to change it back. But I want to give you some background about why you may not want to do that. But that is an option. So if you've noticed that your fields have been grouped and you do not like it, let me know. But let me know soon, because as soon as changes are made, I can't do anything about it anymore. The people who have not been automatically grouped are York, York North, and Central East. Okay, everyone else has had some grouping of their fields done automatically. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'll show you right now. Oh, my poor computer. Okay. So what we have done is allowed you to group not just the details fields as we always have, but now also your update forms and your feedback forms and your mail forms. For that mail forms obviously are just community information. In fact, the grouping is just community information. I apologize for leaping ahead of this, the volunteer. But instead of just taking off checkboxes, you would now assign each of the fields to a particular group, the same way that you always have for your details page. We've made major changes to how this works, so you no longer have to do one at a time the way you used to in the past. You can do all your changes to the page at once. So I can pick a whole bunch of different things, and then I'm not going to do this. I'm in Inform site, and then I can hit update, and it will update all my changes at the same time. Notice as well that it's automatically sorting to the same order that it would do when it's actually displaying this form. So it's going in the same order and showing them in the groups the same way that it would on your form. So it's a lot easier to tell how your page is organized than it used to be. And my export is still going. Okay. I'm going to just go quickly to a feedback page so we can see what that looks like. Pardon my slow computer while it exports 10,000 records. So this is what we've done. You'll see these giant bars across in the middle of my form. Okay, so it's the same kind of groupings that we've always had on the details pages are now available on all of your other forms. What we did after the upgrade was copied the groups that you had on your details pages into your other forms to make it easier for you to do your grouping, because that's going to catch almost all of the fields that you have on your form. It's not going to catch them all, though, and that's part of, I think, what really threw people was you were ending up with some at the top of the list that were under a section called Record Details, which was the default that we created to make sure that you still had all the same fields on your form. So any of the fields that you had on your feedback form or your update form that you didn't have on your details page or that you couldn't pick as a field for your details page, such as org level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, were getting lumped in a section at the top called record details. So for those particular fields, you would have to go in and individually assign those to the group that you want to have them in. All right? Trying to think. But if you do not like the groups and you want them set back to what they were and you don't want to have to go in and do it, as long as you have not been making changes, in particular not deleted that group called record details, then we can go in and do it for your whole database, but we can't do it, you know, oh, I want this view to go back, but leave this view alone. That's not what we can do. If you want us to go back and reset your whole database to be in one group, we can do that. But you need to let us know as soon as possible, and we have to do it for everything you have in your database, not just one part. Okay, are there any other questions about what that grouping is and how that works? Chris, we're good? Okay. And my giant export is done. And you'll see it's now in a zip file. It's not the gigantic CSV file, so I'll let it open in WinZip. And then I would have to extract this or do it in some other form. I'm actually going to open this with Excel so we can see the new Excel tool. Okay. So this is a new type of export that we have. You don't need export permission to do this new Excel export. It's actually a separate kind of permission, which I'm going to get into later. Sorry to skip around. I want to deal with the volunteer folks first. Okay. All right, I'm going to go to the setup area now and talk a little bit about the changes in checklists. We introduced, in the community information software, we introduced a humongous number of new checklists and drop-down fields. And as a result, we really felt that we needed a way to make it easier to label those checklist fields everywhere in the software that they're used, and not just have it say extra checklist, extra drop-down, because that could be really confusing to the user. So what we've done is whatever you have labeled them in the field display, I'm going to relabel one of these now. Instead of being extra checklist B, I'm going to name it my checklist B. And there it is. Okay? You'll notice that now in the checklist editing and also in the find replace and also in the advanced search and basically everywhere that we use those checklists, it's always going to use the new name that I've assigned to it. So if you want to create a whole new checklist for some project, you can label it whatever you want, and everywhere in the software it's now going to use the new name that you've chosen. Even when I go to edit this, okay, even in the editing the values, it's going to understand that this is now called my checklist B. It's not going to call it whatever it was named before. Now this applies not just to the extra checklist, but to every checklist. So all of the predefined checklists that we have for both volunteer and community information, it's going to be whatever you have named them. So if I renamed interaction level to be something else, then that's the new name that it would use everywhere. Everywhere. Okay? And the same with suitable for or training or transportation. If I renamed and relabeled that field, it would be reflected everywhere. One of the really big advantages of this is the sort order in French of the checklist was very, very strange because it was based on the English name. What this has done for us is now the sort order of the checklist is going to be in whatever language I'm working in. So you'll see that the bus route, for example, is not filing up here where it would have in English. It's filing under L because that's what it starts with as the French name. Okay, so that's also reflected in advanced search. With my checklist down here, is they're now in alphabetical order in French. So it's no longer a case where someone working in French has to scroll through a giant list to try and figure out where it might be, because it used to always be in a fixed list, which was based on the English order, and then unfortunately for those working in French, it appeared to be completely random for them. But now it's going to be in alphabetical order for both French and English. And again, if I change the name of the field, it's going to be reflected here. Okay, so that's the checklist naming stuff, and that also carries over to the Find and Replace checklist tool in other places. Right. Check that off. All right, next, we're going to talk a little bit more about extra fields and field setup in general. I'm going to start with the maximum length for extra text fields. So both the volunteer and the community information software have access to extra text fields. So fields you can label whatever you want and use for whatever purpose you want. They were always a big giant text box, but what if you wanted to use it for something different than a big text box? Now you can actually go in and specify the length of the box anywhere from 1,000 to 8,000 characters. So if I have a little 3-digit code that I want to start keeping, I can say, well, extra C is a 3-character box. And that's what the user will get presented with, is this little tiny 3-character box instead of the big giant text area. Any questions about that one? So again, this applies to both volunteer and community information, because you both have access to these text areas, or these extra fields. Just one sec, there's a question.
Yeah, it's probably a question for the next board.
So Chris is going to get into a dialogue separately with the person who asked that question. I'll move on. So return to setup. And I'm now going to show you the other change we've made to setup. This is because in the community information software we added some extra radio buttons, meaning yes, no, true, false, etc. Now, if you wanted those to say something other than yes, no, since they can be used for any purpose, we had to give you a way to be able to edit your radio button values. So if you instead wanted this to say required and not required, for example, you can do that. All right, so this is, it's available in both sides of the software, but it's really intended for the new extra radio buttons that are available in the community information software. Okay. I'm going to demonstrate a feature that's just for the community information software right now, but we expect will be part of the volunteer software in the future. So I'm going to demonstrate it now anyway. Here. Okay. On an agency by agency basis, we have the ability to specify that a particular field is required and force the user to fill it out. Okay? So again, this has to be done in your agency setup to say that for every user in that agency, they must fill out required fields. All right? It's not turned on by default for any of you, so you will not see this feature unless you choose to turn it on. You can see here with the red dot that this has been marked by the software as a required field in the field setup. Someone's chosen it to be required. When I try and submit updates, oh, and of course, it's yelling at me because I changed extra C to these 3 characters. Of course I did. How helpful. Okay. Do I have, I'm going to go into my agency setup because I actually don't think that I have it enforcing required fields on me. Okay, so here's where it is, enforce required fields. I'm going to turn it to yes. Okay. And did it still have my erasure of org level 1? Yeah, so there's my erasure of org level 1, so it should yell at me about that. Okay, so this is what happened. It said a required field is empty, and it gives me a link to pop back to the field and fill it out. If I, see if I can get another one that's required. So I can also, I'll take out the record number too. Okay, so it's going to show me the fields that I have not filled out, and if I click on them, it will take me to that field so that I can fill it out properly. I'm going to reset the form, and now it's going to yell at me about extra C again. And now I should be able to submit my changes, no problem. Okay? So again, if you want to use this, you need to go into your agency setup and turn it on. Be very thoughtful about the fields that you require if you're going to enforce people filling it out, because there may be cases where that field is not appropriate for every record. So this is a feature that requires a lot of thought. We do not allow every field in the database to even be set as required. So for example, org level 2 through 5, you're not even allowed to set that as required, because as we all know, there's no way that people have to fill out an org level 5. It's an entirely optional field depending on from one record to another whether or not it's appropriate to fill that field out. So this is not available for every single field. Only the ones where it's at least feasible that you might be able to require content in that field. We've got a question?
No, it's just we're running into overtime, so just mention that the session is being recorded.
Okay, yeah, the session is being recorded, so if you have to leave, hopefully you can download it later, and we don't guarantee that the recording will be successful because we've had incidences in the past, but hopefully that'll be it. I have one more feature to show for volunteer, and then the remainder of the features are just community information, so the volunteer users may choose to stick around to see some of the features that may or may not be in their software later. All right, so volunteer menu, I'm going to go and show the major change is the introduction of autocomplete to your number of positions field, and also the areas served has now been fully integrated into the update form. Okay. So, we'll start with the areas of interest. I have none in this record, apparently. Oh, I need to change this to say add. So instead of having to update your areas of interest after you update the rest of the record, you can now do it while you are updating the record. Okay. Any questions about areas of interest editing? All right, and the other one I mentioned was the number of positions. We now have the autocomplete for the community. So if I needed to add something for Toronto, I can say, I can just add that to my box and say I have 5 positions in Toronto. Or Alton region. 6. Okay, so that's how we've changed number of positions. Chris is just wanting me to emphasize the need to actually hit the Enter key or click the arrow button. Either one will work. Porcupine, really? So again, hit the Enter key or click the button. In the community information software, we've actually changed this little arrow button to say the word add, and we'll be doing that on the volunteer software as well, because we want it to be really clear that you can't just type it in. This is just to help you find the value. You have to still add it to the record by clicking, hitting Enter, and so on. Okay, so I believe that's it for items that apply to the volunteer software, at least items that explicitly apply to the volunteer software. Everything else is really focused on the community information software. Some of it may or may not be relevant to the volunteer software in the future, but doesn't apply at the moment. So if any of our volunteer users would like to drop off, feel free, and I will continue on. And I'm going to go to the next logical place, which is the entry form for our community information software, since we've already gotten into a bit of that. So the same type of autocomplete has come into play on various fields in the community information editing form. I'm going to go through them one by one so that you can see where the changes have made and what they do. Right. Area served is the first. It works just like I was showing in the volunteer software. I can pick and then either hit the Enter key or the Add button, and it will add it. If I pick one that's already in my list, it will check it off. Okay, I'll demonstrate that again. Okay, it checked it. So if you happen to type something that's already in the list up here, it will check it if it's not checked, and it will not add it twice. If I add one by mistake, all I have to do is uncheck it, okay? I don't have to otherwise delete it. It's not going to be a problem that it's sitting here, even if I had text here. If that checkbox is not checked, it will go away, the same as it always has. If you wanted to remove it, all you do is uncheck it, and it will not be there. All right, and they all work very similarly to this. Bus route. Pick a drop-down and click Add, and you can add as many as you want at once. It will not double add the same ones. Okay, and again, to remove it, you just check off the ones that you don't want, and they will go away when you submit the form. Languages, again, same thing. If I pick one that's already in the list, like English, it will just check it off. If I pick one that's not in the list, like Dutch, it will add it and check it. And then I have access to be able to add notes to it. Again, hit Enter or click the Add button is critical. Schools, same thing. Subjects. I have a lot of subjects in this record. Subjects are exactly the same. So I can start typing and add as many new subjects as I want. Okay? So obviously a lot easier than using the subject finder, but you do still have access to the subject finder if you need to look something up, find an unused subject, and so on. So that reference is still there if you need it, but if you know generally the term that you want, you can look it up. Now, one of the nice things is it's a contained search, so it doesn't matter the order of the words that I type in, okay? I can do it in any order, and it doesn't matter. It also does forms us, so I think it's a good one. All the same kinds of searches that you would get from the front page, it will work here as well. Again, if I don't hit add, it will not add it, and if I try and add a subject that doesn't exist, nothing's going to happen. It's going to completely ignore it. I have to pick one that actually exists in order to be able to add it. Okay, distributions work the same way. It will search the names and the codes. I don't have a lot of distributions in here. There's an example. So you can see it searched the name of the distribution, not just the code. So I don't have to memorize all of the codes. We are going, pardon me, I have a sneeze that won't come out. We are going to add the publication field in the same way as we have the distribution to your update form. We're not taking away the existing publication management that we have. That's really important because it allows people to do things with publications even if they don't have the privilege to update the record. But for the good of the record owner, we're also going to give you the ability to add and remove publication codes at the same time as you're updating the record. So that's a future feature that we will have, and when we do it, will work just the same way as this, where you can type in the name or the code of the publication and have it suggest the list to you, so you don't have to memorize your 200 plus publication codes that many of you have. Okay. Is that all the auto? Yeah, that's all the auto. I did languages. Okay, so that's all the autocomplete that we have on the entry form at the moment. Oh no, I'm missing the best one. What am I doing? I'm missing our org level autocomplete. So let's do that. There we go. All right, so one of the new kinds of autocomplete that we have is a name autocomplete. So I can start by right. I'm trying to think of what would start with something here. Oh yeah, big will work. There we go. Big brothers, big sisters, Hamilton and Burlington. I need one with multiple org levels.
I know is org level 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, well I'll be lazy and I'll start with the one that I know works, which is my org level 1. It will then search all of the sub-levels of org level 1 and give me all the results for that. And what I'm going to do to actually make this work, because I don't have a good memory for the records in my database, is find a good record to give you an example. There we go, Mad Science. Perfect. Let's try that one.
Okay, we're lagging behind you here.
All right. Mad Science has multiple programs to it, okay? Day camp programs for the second one. So one of the things that I want to hint again is spaces. If you can't remember what something's called, you can use a whack of spaces and it will search for you without knowing as many letters as you need to. What are the org level 4s I have? Okay, I have a bunch of them. So again, this is only bringing up the matches that are at each org level. So obviously there are lots more things in my database that begin with D other than day camp programs, but it's only going to look up other org level 2s for the organization mad science. So this is going to hopefully completely eliminate the issue of having your org levels not match each other and then not link up properly. For things like, oh, I had an extra space between the words, so they didn't match. This should hopefully eliminate that problem, because it will automatically suggest to you the values in other records and make it very difficult for you to accidentally misspell or mispunctuate an org level. Any questions about that? Okay. So that's the end of autocomplete on the entry form. One thing just to mention is that we did add the transportation field to the full text search. That's not something I can particularly demonstrate, but we did do that. Okay, and we did do proximity searching with decimals, which is on the advanced search form. It used to be that if I was showing, if I wanted to do something within a certain number of kilometers, it had to be an actual integer, so it had to be 2 or 3 or 4. It couldn't be, 0.5 kilometers. Now it can. Now you're allowed to do fractions, so I can say within 0.5 kilometers, and it will actually do that search. Obviously, only showing things incredibly close to where I searched. Okay, next. All right, I'm going to talk about all our new extra fields, and there are many, many, many. There are 3 new extra checklist fields, 6 extra drop-down fields, 3 extra radio fields, an extra contact field, an extra website field. I think that's everything. I go to my extra section here. So extra contact field is going to have the same as all the other contacts: name, email, organization, phone, fax. We have the extra website field here. And you can label these to be whatever you like and use them however you wish. They are non-standard, meaning there's no official content that you would put in any of these fields. They can be used for anything that you want. Besides the extra field, we have a number of additional fields that are available, which really will not be relevant to most of you, but are available. OCG number, the Office of the Comptroller General. WCB number, so Workers' Compensation Board number. Corporation registration number, tax registration number. Those are all new fields if you're interested. We also have a couple of new Boolean fields, which are the yes, no, true, false fields. One is accredited, and one is certified. Okay, so you can take that to mean whatever is applicable to you. What else do we have? What is it? We have some new drop-down fields. Preferred currency, these are all financial related. Preferred currency, preferred payment method, payment terms, and fiscal year end. Those are all, as I say, financial related fields that won't apply to most people. We have made a large number of changes to the vacancy field, added some optional components to that field, and also improved the display and editing process for vacancy information for anyone who actually uses that vacancy information. So this is the new form. All of the new items on the form are actually optional and can be turned on and off. So you wouldn't have to use all the components of this vacancy system, just the ones that you were interested in. The new components are the activity name and description, funded capacity versus we just used to have capacity, the hours per day, days per week, weeks per year, full-time equivalent are all new. Everything else is just as it was, and again, you can add as many as many services as you want. So you can have one service for men, one service for women, one service for boys, whatever. And each of them may have different capacities and vacancies and so on. So that's our vacancy system for those who are interested. The other major new component, which looks very similar to the vacancy, is other addresses, other locations. So this one doesn't have any, so I can start from scratch. Please keep in mind that this is a non-standard field, meaning if you choose to put information into this other addresses field, it will not go to find help. Please do not put any information into this field that is critical for basic service information, okay? Feel free to use it for extra information or for internal records, whatever you like, but Find Help cannot accept this information. So if you put critical service information into this other locations field, they can't do anything with it. All right? The idea here, you can have as many different addresses as you want in one record. So if I wanted to list all the different meeting locations that they have, whatever the case may be, as many different addresses as I want. Each one of those addresses is stored in its proper compartments, and I have the option of including a map link with it in the same way that I can for other addresses, so they can have a clickable View Google Maps link or View Map plus Map or whatever mapping system I wish to use. Okay? So you can have as many of these locations as you want. No restriction. You can also label this to be whatever you like. The group that funded this is actually using this as a billing address field. So it can be used in whatever method is useful to you, but please be careful not to put critical information into this field that you expect people to be able to get at on 211ontario.ca, because they do not have this field. Any questions? Okay. I think that's us done with new fields. Okay. All right. So the next thing I'm going to go over is the Excel output. So I showed that earlier, but I'm actually going to show you how to work with it now. In your setup area, you have a new item called Excel Output Profiles. I'll create a brand new one. You can choose to include column headers or not. If you use field name, it's going to be the ugly database name. So org level 1 with underscores, for example. Or if you use the field labels, the friendly names, then it's going to use whatever label you have put on the field. Or you can choose to have no column headers, and then all you'll get is the data, and there won't be any titles at the top of each column. Exporting with Excel does not have the same permissions as other kinds of exports. So someone who has been banned from export can still export with Excel if you allow it to be available in their view. So you can give, if you have a third party who wants to be able to get their data out in Excel, but you don't want to give them just general export permission in software because that gives you access to a lot of information about the records, then you can do it this way and have some control over what is output. It is much more protected in that they only have access to the fields that you've given them in the profile. They only have access to the records in their view. And if they are not allowed to see private fields, then those will also be blocked when they do the Excel output. So it's a much safer way to give people access to information. And keep in mind that anyone who has a login to the database can produce Excel files from their search results. So it's not, this is something that everyone can already do, but they can't do it as nicely as they can with this profile. So it really is advantageous to give people access to the Excel output profiles because they get a much nicer result. And you're not giving them anything that they can't already do if they really want to. All right, so again, whatever view I assign it to, that's who's going to have access to this particular profile, and they would be able to output any of the records in their view. The way that you create it is you pick a column order, a sort order, for any of the fields that you want, and that will specify the order in which the columns occur. And then you can have a sort record order, which specifies the way the rows sort, so the order of the records themselves. All right? So let's say I want to, I'll start with org level 1, pardon me. And let's say I want to sort org level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want to show org level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want to show, let's say I want addresses and office phone. There we go. So you notice I did lots of repeats. I'm actually going to do this as a 2. This is done in grouping, so you don't have to give a unique number to each thing. You just need to group things together. Okay, now you'll see all the ones that I picked occur at the top of the form. So my report would show org level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then the address, then the phone number. If I decide, oh, hey, I want to have the record number first, I'll put that in as 0. Okay, so now my output would have record number in the first column, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then the address, then the phone number. And again, they would sort by org level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I instead say, no, I actually want this to sort by record number, I can do that too. You do not have to include a field in order to sort by it, so I could take record number out and still sort by record number. That's acceptable. One of the things you'll notice that we have been trying to do with this release is stop making you update each item one at a time. We know it's incredibly annoying. So we have put in the work to try and start eliminating having to make you submit multiple rows one at a time and be able to submit the entire form at once. Hopefully that will make the process of managing these things a lot easier. Once I've created this profile and assigned it to views, anyone in that view will then be allowed to do that. And if they normally wouldn't see the export link at the side, they will get access to it once they have Excel output profiles in their views. But they wouldn't get access to any of the other kinds of export formats if they don't have permission to perform exports. They would only get the Excel spreadsheet one. Okay, they wouldn't get any of these or any of these. They would only get access to the Excel spreadsheet and only the profiles that you have said that they could have in their view. You'll notice there's two different kinds here. If you actually want to work in Excel, HTML is better. It will actually take all the formatting that you've done, the bolding, the link, paragraphs, anything that you've put in will show up pretty nicely, really, in Excel. So the result that you get in terms of viewing it in Excel will be much, much nicer. However, if you're using this information to do things like mail merges or any kind of other program other than Excel, CSV is what you want. Unfortunately, Microsoft Office seems to have taken away its support for various kinds of nice XML, HTML, and Excel, XML, and HTML. They've taken them away in the more recent versions of Office. Why they would put a feature in that worked and then take it away in the next release is beyond me, but that's what they did. So if you have old versions of Office, the HTML version will probably work, and we used to have an XML version, and that worked too, but it doesn't work in new versions of Office, and that's why we added the CSV option, is so that you can continue to do mail merges in new versions of Microsoft Word. All right, any questions about how the Excel output works? This will work much, much better than anything you can do from your search results. Much better, because we've accommodated a lot of the little gotchas that would have been very, very hard for any of you to deal with just by getting them from your search results. Like we've always had a how-to on our community resources site telling you how to get your search results into Microsoft Excel. But the way that we're able to produce the results when we are doing the Excel output is far superior to what you would get in your search results. And it's just easier because it's available instantly. And the same way that you can export or do a print report from your search results, you can also do an Excel output from your search results. So I can do a search and then check all and hit export, and one of my options will be to export it to Excel in whatever profile I've created. So the other couple of features I have here are not particularly relevant for display or for demonstration. We've put in some documentation into our sharing format schema for people who want to share records with people outside of CIOC. And we've also put in a check so that if you do bulk geocoding, meaning you are mapping a whole bunch of your records at once, it used to be if you used the back button to go back to that page, it would restart the bulk geocoding all over again, and we stopped that. So nothing of particular day-to-day relevance. Are there any general questions or information? Anything else? Well, I've got questions here, but I can't read them. My screen is so small.
Okay, I got it. Michelle is not seeing the Excel spreadsheet section on his own logged-in version.
Right. Okay. So you will not see this unless you have created Excel output profiles. So your first step is to go into that setup area like I showed you and actually create one of these profiles. If you haven't created any profiles, you will not get access to that yet. As soon as you start creating profiles and put them in your view, you will instantly see that little drop-down that I showed you of Excel profiles here. This will appear. If you haven't created profiles yet, you will not get that. There's a question about how do we set field enforcement. Okay, so just a reminder, there's two things that you need to do. I'm going to go over it again. Chris has the answer, but I'm going to go over it again anyway. There's two things that you need to do if you want to enforce field requirements. One, you need to go set up agencies and turn on field enforcement for that agency, and that will then apply to every single user for that agency. Okay? And step two is you need to decide what your required fields are and tell the database. So that you go into field display, and you will see a little column called required, REQ. You need to check that box. And once you do that, that will become a required field. You'll notice, as I discussed earlier, not all fields are available to make required. All right? The other thing you should be aware of is some of our radio buttons do not allow you to not have it be required. One example is non-public. If you took the required off of non-public, it would be bad. Because really, it's either non-public or public. What happens when you take the required off of a radio button is it introduces a third option called unknown. This is used quite a lot in the volunteer software where it would be police check, required, not required, unknown, meaning you don't know if they require a police check. So sometimes that's really useful, and some of our radio boxes allow that. In fact, all our new extra radios allow that third option of unknown. But some of our boxes, like non-public and block update emails, they don't. It's either required or not, like it's either yes or no. We don't allow unknown as an option. You can't say, I don't know if it's public. It either is or it isn't. So be
required there doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, be aware that that isn't something that you can make not required because we don't allow an unknown option. That would be bad.
No, what happens? If you uncheck the required, it doesn't mean that one is always going to pass the required test because unchecking required doesn't make it have an ability to be unknown, does it?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you uncheck required for non-public or block update email, that may result in weird side effects. That is not allowed. The database itself doesn't allow that. For every other radio button, if you do that, it's perfectly acceptable. Meaning, if you want to have an unknown option, that's fine. And all you have to do is make it not required, and it will instantly have an unknown option. And that would be the default. All right. Is there anything else that you would like me to cover or discuss today? Nope? Okay. Well, I think that's everything then. I know that some of the features were a little bit, oh my goodness, it's changed, and sort of scared a few people when they came in on Monday. I certainly apologize for frightening a few people with this upgrade, if that's what happened. But I hope that you'll really enjoy the new features now that you know that they're there and how they work. Since we have changed the way that the user experience works now, if you do have any concerns, if you're having troubles making something work, if it's not working the way you expect, please let us know, because we will work to try and fix it or tweak it or whatever needs to happen as soon as we possibly can. And it's also important for us to understand what you like and what you don't like, so that we can consider what further changes we might like to make. So if you really, really like the autocomplete and want to have it all over the place, you know, it's important for us to know that. If you find it frustrating, it's important for us to know that too. So please do give us feedback, positive and negative, and that will help us to guide other changes that we might make to the software. Okay, I'm signing off now. Where do you turn it off in the view is a question. So it's just part of the regular view setup. So if I go to edit a view, any view, and go to search, it will be under the basic search section, and it says keyword autocomplete. So if you don't like it, just uncheck it.